So here we are live, and it is Monday, and it was a nice day, relatively sunny, few clouds. I did a bunch of errands, and one of them was to. I think I've given you my little idea that whenever you want to do something, you got to get the other stuff that you've been doing out of the way. You got to finish things up. You got to when I grew up in New York City. New York City was my town. And at an early age, when I was 13, when I kind of, went into the seminary, I had the summer before I went into the seminary, I had to go to a kind of preparatorial summer camp, right, to get you up to snuff to be able to, be in this scholastic environment. Well, forget that. That was a little difficult to do. I mean, it just kind of got you used to like being away from home and studying and being in, it just gave you the connection to the monastic life I was about to go in. But it wasn't, right? It was a private kind of school. It was run by a prep school that was in this little town called North Bridgeton, Maine. And that town, the guy who owned the general store, the gas station, he was the postmaster. He owned the ice house. And his family had like kind of owned that town. And the only thing that he didn't own was a prep school, and that was like super rich kids were going there, and their parents wanted them just to not be in their life, so they sent them top of Maine. Anyway, had this big long lake, and they had in the general store they had a fountain, a place where you could get a cheeseburger, French fries, onion rings, a really good milkshake, really good ice cream, anything, a sundae, whatever, and it was very close to where we were. We could just and we could leave, not a problem, leave our little camp and walk the quarter of a mile into the Ryerson's neck of the woods, and have a sundae or whatever, right? And the first time I went in there was this beautiful, beautiful woman behind the counter, right? And she's probably, maybe 24. And she had just finished school, and she was heading off to her first job as a registered nurse in Boston, and she was all excited about going to the big city after going through. And she had gone to college, so she had not only got her RN, but she's also got like a administrative degree, so she's going to have a pretty good job or starting in that direction. And she was all excited, and she was going to meet a doctor and marry and be rich, right? That was her little dream, right? And this is maybe 1964-ish, right? And so I'm going to, so I go there, and I kind of get just smitten, puppy dog kind of love on this girl. And I went there every day and talked to her, and she liked me. I read books. I kind of was semi, self-confident. Grew up in New York City. I had stories about all my experiences in New York City, and she kind of was, she liked that. You're a cute little boy. And she'd like pat me on the head and be sweet and kiss me on the cheek and flirt with me. She's 24. I'm like 13 or 14. So she actually kind of splits within a few weeks of that. And her next sister, who's maybe 19, has just just finished up at college, right? And she came back for the summer, and so she's applied for a couple of jobs, but before she gets them, she's going to, again, help her parents out and run the general store, da 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 da. And she was 19, and again, she was as amazingly attractive as her older sister, and she was had dreams of like being in business and da 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 and running and being in a big city, and she was gonna, this is her time to shine. And so again, I kind of flirted. She flirted. We had this almost the same kind of thing. She's like a few years older than me, by maybe 6 years, and so she's, oh, you're an interesting, of all the guys I've been talking to, you're the most interesting, and you're 13. Anyway, so that was kind of, so I was, every time I didn't have to study, I would stand there, right? And so a week or two goes by, and she gets her job, she leaves. Then her sister, Teresa, is there, right? And Teresa is my age, maybe a year older, maybe 14. She's like maybe almost 15. We're almost, she's older than I am, but she's, definitely my age, a lot more than her two older sisters. So anyway, she's running the store, and her mother's there too. And her mother kind of thinks I'm cute, and she's like, encouraging Teresa to hang out with me, right? And she thought it was funny that her two older daughters, she said, "Well, third one's a charm, buddy." She kept saying to me, and so they had a big long lake, and they had a marina, and Teresa she was a sailor and a skier, and so she took me out on her sailboat, and she was great, and she would haul this thing like that, and there was a spinnaker, and it was a little sailboat, but it had a spinnaker and a jib, and she was teaching me how to sail, and we had the greatest of time. And this big long lake, actually about a mile or two from the marina, there were a bunch of nice little islands and peninsulas, and that side of the lake didn't have a road on it, so it was like a national forest. And we would go over there, and we'd take a little picnic, and we'd go there and explore. And she had to explore, she knew caves and tunnels and waterfalls, and we just had the best of times. And her two sisters were, I basically flirted with, they flirted with me, they thought it was cute. But she and I were close of age, and we had so many similar ways of looking at things. She had a different way. She had a very much artistic way. And this is when I realized that to be an artist, you don't have to be a painter or sculptor, writer, theater person. I mean, she was an artist at athletics. She really was. She was like, and her dream is to go to the Olympics. So, and she really didn't. She was put off by boys because it was this prep school that she had to make sodas, and all these guys, and they were rich, and they expected her to just fall on. And she really was not. The more a guy thought, "Oh, I'm so cool, you should and she was like, forget it, you're a jerk." And because I was sweet and nice, and her sisters told her about me, because she was still in school, and then when her sisters left, she ran with her mom, the store. Anyway, so, and they said, he's a really nice guy. He's like really smart, but he doesn't wear it on his sleeve. He's always really more interested in listening to what we have to say than him tell us stories. But when we ask him, his stories are amazing. So I think, so anyway, it was like Romeo and Juliet, right? And so, and her parents were like, really very supportive, right? So we had the most sweetest, kindest. I mean, we didn't do anything. I mean, we went out on the sailboat. Her mother would give us a picnic basket, and we'd go out there, and we'd spend hours, exploring and fooling around. And we kissed a lot, but that was about it. And she loved it. She was an amazing athlete. So there was a tennis court at the prep school. We played tennis. She was a great golfer. They had kind of a driving range and a putting range, and we played that. And we just had the best of times without having to spend any money or do anything. We walked everywhere, and we sailed, and we swam, and just had the best of times. And so, I had to leave, and then I went to the seminary, and that's a whole nother story, which if you go back and look at other ones, you might catch that story, but I'll tell it again, but it would take too long. Now we're in 10 minutes, so we're good. So anyway, I went through, and basically, I'll give you the short end of the thing. I went to this, school, which was a seminary. They had three tiers. You had the guys who are going to be priests. We wore the Catholics. The guys who are going to be Catholic businessmen. They wore three-piece suits. Catholic military guys. They wore uniforms. The Pope was going to rule the world through our prep school, and it was very scholastic. I mean, I went to these interesting schools where I had really great teachers. Never had to take tests. I never, and I didn't have to compete with other people. And this was a very competitive place. And I had a crew of guys like me. And long of the short, we didn't take any guff. The seniors handed it out. They had this thing called fagging, where freshmen were slaves to the juniors and seniors. We had to do exactly what they said. And we rebelled and started a war, and many people got hurt and great collateral damage. And of course, I got blamed, and basically I got punished and punished and punished. And the way I got around the punishment was I acted like, and I did, like I was forced to work in the kitchen. Well, those people were great. I loved them. They were like my new family, and they were slaves. They literally slaves. The Catholic Church owned them. And I organized them into a union, and we went on strike when the Parents' Day was. So I've done stuff like that. And the stories go on and on and on. Anyway, long or short of it, I get thrown out. And my cardinal godfather comes and gets me because he knows that if I stay there any longer, even though the headmaster is trying to protect me from the crazed Jesuits, I'm just probably going to die. So he came and got me, and I spent the last weeks with him at St. Pat's, and that's a whole nother story. My Cardinal Cushing. Anyway, so then summertime comes, and the Cardinal gets me into this prep school called the Winchington School for Boys. And this is a prep school for the richest offsprings on the planet. Shah of Iran's son. And we all were kicked out of other schools, every single one of us, right? Some more than one. Me, I was like, you did what? I did things that, so I had a lot of street cred in that school, but those kids were so rich. I mean, the corporate wealth of the planet went to this school. Between that summer, I came home, and this was the last summer I was we were in Long Island. My parents were going to move into New York City. And so, I got home, was just going to kick around my neighborhood. I went and saw my friends from, grammar school in 7th and 8th grade, and they were like, what happened to you? And, oh, man, we were all, and I just wasn't there. But I spent a nice 2 weeks with all my buddies and friends, and they all have their plans, and we went out and danced at places we would dance at and just have a good old time. And it was like the zip had gone, right? Because they had stayed there and I had done this other thing, and they just couldn't relate to what my near-death experiences were. So, and I'll tell you that my seminary story in great deal till another time. But we're at 13 minutes 58. We're moving right along, and it's about the meaning to life. So, I got another at least 6 to 12 weeks before I go to this new prep school, and I didn't want to stick around and watch my sister moan and my brother, try to be James Dean but couldn't do it. And anyway, so I basically one night I had worked in those 3 to 5 weeks. I got a job at this country club that a clubhouse, because they would just go there and play tennis or play golf and then go back to their estates and have these kick-ass parties. And so things had changed, and those people didn't exist anymore. So that country club did, and the people who were moving in and building houses in those estates, they wanted to join the country club, but they wanted a clubhouse. So they built a big clubhouse and had this big fancy, dining room, and they were going to have the parties there. So they hire a French chef, and this guy's kind of nuts. And so he hires a staff that has no real experience, and it's like the army. He wants to train us. You ever celebrate the at Stonehenge? Not any of those, but I'd gone to Stonehenge a number of times, and I saw a lot of things, and that's a whole other story, which I will tell you. Maybe, you know what? Maybe we'll go to Stonehenge in our meditation if I can get through, because tonight's chat is about the meaning to life, and it's more than job, consume, hate, and die. It's more about this, right? It's more about the small things and the chances we take to be more than we can be. And so I met this really great girl before I went to seminary. I had a seminary, which is a whole nother story, but near-death experience. I mean, they tried to kill me. Then I went and worked at this country club, and this guy, a French chef, he basically took none of us who knew anything and taught us how to be chefs, because he wanted us to do it his way. And he was like, off the hook. And so he was, trained us, in about 2 weeks, how to chop, how to this, how to make a roux, all that kind of stuff. And he was like a general. He was like, he'd marshal. I mean, he was the guy who taught me how to organize and how to strategize, right? To deal with, be on the flux, be on the bubble. That's what he used to call it. And he had this and you really had to listen to him to understand what the heck he was saying. So anyway, and he was nuts, right? So bottom line, the thing opens up after about a week and a half of us training us, and we're knocking stuff out. And he's a perfectionist, and he does these, pate swans and all this kind of stuff. And these people are just crass, not even bohemians, not even cavemen. And they would come in and slice the head off of the swan instead of like taking it off to the side, because it's art, and just eating the stuff and getting drunk so he couldn't even taste the stuff. And he was getting more and more pissed off. So by the second week, he was like, he hadn't slept. He'd been doing, amphetamines, and he was off. And he went, and there were farms all around us. So he went to this dairy farm, and he got, 20 or so buckets of cow shit, warm that day cow shit. And he made pate out of it. And he made all kinds of things out of it that tasted amazing, but you wouldn't want to eat that shit if you knew what it was, because it was shit. And he fed it to all of these drunk people, and they all got horribly ill. And he had to be taken away in a straitjacket. And they couldn't find another chef, so the management came to us, and there were about 8 of us. And there were a couple of guys who were in their 20s. I was the youngest, I was like 15-ish, going on 16. And they said, "Can you guys, run this summer? We'll pay you a bonus. Can you do it?" And we said, "Sure," because, chef taught us. So, and we actually did pretty good. And we stepped it down and just gave these people roast beef, potatoes, vegetables, salad, some nice baked things. There was a girl who was a baker, and she was the girl in the crew, and she was a really good baker. Had great stoves. Anyway, long story short, I was that of about 3 weeks, and the waitresses were all college girls, and they were really just party animals. And what we would do is, like, we were the guy who was the head guy was like a mobster, and he was taking, it was like straight out of Goodfellas. He took half the food that he ordered and he sold it out the back door. He took half the booze that he ordered and sold it out the back door, and the rest we ate and had these killer parties after everybody went home, because we had the keys to the kingdom. And this one party got a little bit out of hand because they were all doing drugs, serious drugs, and not me, and because I just didn't like it. And so it was just debauchery. and they had taken the golf course and they were flying all over the place with them, and they were jumping the golf carts over this knoll and trying to get them into the swimming pool. And it was just, and when the manager showed up like 6 in the morning, there were like 50 people strewn all over the place, drunk, drugged, naked, and attached to each other in ways that the human body wasn't quite designed to attach. And so we all got fired. They didn't care that they'd have to, God knows what kind of staff they could get. We would just, it was what, I mean, they overlooked a lot of the stuff we did, but this was too much. So bingo. I had about $400. I didn't buy anything. I had like $400 stuffed in my dresser drawer from just, I guess it was less than 5 weeks. And I had a great time, and I hung out with my friends. And so one night I'm like there and I'm kind of thinking about, okay, well, now what I'm going to do with the rest of the summer? Ride around on my bike? I don't know. So what I did, I decided, I'm going to go up to Maine. I got $400. That should be able to, not a problem. So I basically packed a little go bag, a few, not, just a little nothing, no suitcase, just a little, I had a nylon bag, so a couple of shorts, T-shirts, socks, a few other sundries in there, and wrote a little note on my pillow and said, don't worry, I'm not running away. I just need to take a vacation. Anyway, so I, anger-infused food, yes, eating cow shit. So I basically walk, I leave at about, I don't know, sunrise, it's like 5 in the morning. And I, from my house into Glen Cove, where the train was, maybe 6 miles, if that. And so, I cut through Young's Farm, which cut off a good mile, got out onto 127, stuck my thumb out. Some guy stopped. He said, where are you going? I said, oh, train station. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go through town. I'll drop you off. So bingo, there I was. Within half an hour, it wasn't a weekend, it was a weekday, so the business trains were running. So I got a train like, I don't know, 7 o'clock a.m. I took it Long Island Railroad straight into Penn Station. Decided to get an Amtrak to Boston, which I did. And once I got to Boston, right next to Boston was a, bus station, right? And I got a bus to to Bridgeton. And so from Bridgeton to North Bridgeton, which they didn't have a bus to, was, I don't know, 40, 50 miles, give or take. So I said, oh, hitchhike. And I got to Bridgeton, I don't know, 6, 7 o'clock. It was still sunny, but anyway, so I started walking. I got a ride right out of town, right on whatever county road that was heading to North Bridgeton. And, then he drove me about, I don't know, 10 miles. And then so I'm turning here, got off there. And I proceeded to, it started to get dark and there was no traffic, period. That's it. This is a rural farm kind of road and people go to sleep, right? So anyway, I started walking and walking and walking and walking and no cars, walking and walking and walking. I walked about 10 miles and then, I don't know, it was about 11. I didn't have a watch, but give or take. And somebody stopped, picked me up, and drove me almost there. Not, it was another 7, 10 miles, and he wanted to get home. And I said, can't you just drive me? I said, man, I'm got to go over this way, and I'm a little late. So, okay. So I walked the last 4 or 5 miles, and it was a beautiful evening. Warm, not a cloud in the sky. Maine in the summertime, you can't beat it. And all the frogs were croaking away, and the crickets were cricketing away, and the stars were out, and the moon had come and gone, and I walk all the way to North Bridgeton, and I walk into the town, and I walked to Teresa's parents' house, and I know that her father comes out to get the mail when the sun rises. Well, the sun hadn't rise, so I basically they had a couch, and I took the cushion, and I kind of put it on their porch, and I slept on the cushion. And when the sun rose, the door opened, and he was like the town alarm clock. He opened the screen door, and he would let it slam. And pretty much everyone in the household heard that. And almost everyone in the town heard it. I mean, it had this very succinct cracking sound. Anyway, it kind of woke me up because I thought I knew it would. And because our camp was a good quarter-mile away. And, if it was quiet or if I was awake, and I would hear that door. So anyway, I stay, I don't get up, I don't jump up. He just kind of steps out on the porch, looks over and sees me and goes, "Al, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I just came to visit." And he kind of smiles and goes, "Oh, yeah, you came to visit Teresa." I said, "But of course, she's my girl." That's what she'd call me her boy, and anyway, we had that. And her parents thought it was so cute. And they trusted her daughter completely, and they trusted me completely. And he goes, "Well, how long are you going to stay?" And I said, "Well, as long as you'll, have me, I said, "I don't have to be back to my new prep school, until September." And that was a good month, not 2 months away. And he says, "Well, do your parents know where you are?" And I go, "No, I didn't tell them where I was going. I just left a note saying, 'Don't worry, I'm just taking a vacation.'" And he kind of just shook his head and laughed because, "Maybe we should call your parents." I said, "What time is it?" "No, it's 6:30. I said, "Well, let's wait an hour. My dad will be up making oatmeal." So he went in there, went in the kitchen, and he put me straight to work, peeling potatoes and chopping up onions and making coffee while he prepared other things. And then Mrs. R came out and said, "Oh, what are you here?" I said, "Well, I'm here to make you breakfast." she She said, she shook her head and she went upstairs and got, Teresa, I could hear her, "Teresa, you won't believe who's here," right? And Teresa was not the greatest of morning people. I mean, she could get up anytime if she had something to do, but if she had her ruthers, she would like to sleep till at least 11. Anyway, so she comes running down and gives me a big hug, and she's like, "Oh, where'd you come from?" And she had me tell her the whole story of my journey and everyone I met and everything, and she was like, "Wow, yeah." So and she goes, "You did that for me?" And I said, No, I came for you." No, of course I did that for you. Who else am I going to spend the next 2 months with? My parents. Ride my bicycle around my neighborhood. No, sorry. This is going to be way more fun. And, Mr. R, he put me to work, He got me working in the ice house and, a few other of his, businesses. And he knew I was a handy guy. So, I wired a whole bunch of equipment for him. So he was getting his money's worth out of me. And he thought, he made me work hard. It might dampen my hormonal system. But we didn't even go there. Meaning, we didn't. It was like we were so sweetie on each other, and such good friends, and talked about everything. We just talked and talked, and I asked her about her stories or what she'd done that year and how her skiing's doing, and she could talk to me technically about her sports, and I was interested. And, I remember one time she goes, "No one's ever interested about what I do, and you are honestly it." I said, "Because I'm interested in you, so whatever you're doing, I'm interested in it," right? So we had this just great, great summer. And that's when I had this epiphany, right? And basically, they had me sleep, not in their house, but the barn behind the house. They grabbed a bed from the attic and dragged it up there, and I made a nice little, apartment for myself, right? And it had facilities and water and Teresa would come and spend time with me there, you know, till late at night. And her parents said, Teresa, don't, they never did any of that, right? And because they trusted us completely. And we never, you know, misplaced their trust. And I always came in and helped Mrs. R with making dinner. Teresa and I would do it, and had the best of times. And so I had this epiphany once talking to her, saying, "This is what life should be about." And that you enjoy every minute. It's like a good meal. And every meal we had with Mrs. R she was from Ireland, and then she spent time in Europe, and that's when she met Mr. R in the Air Force. So, and they had seen so much horror when they came back and had three daughters and had this life. It was just so sweet to see them because they were been married 30 or something years, had these three daughters, and lived in the top part of Maine where they get feet of snow, and they just loved their daughters and loved each other and loved what they did. And bonjour, divine fish, esoteric dragon, Angie, Eden, T, Mike, Eden. So this is what tonight is about. It's about really what life's about, which is enjoying every second of it, not being stuck in work or fear or anger or mass consumption of addiction, right? And so Teresa and I had this sweetiness. And it was like an affair to remember because when I went to this other prep school, it was forever. We wrote. We were both writers. I'm a letter writer, and so we would write. And we had our relationship was outside of anything else. Meaning, so she had all these boys. She was the prettiest girl in town, and she had all these rich prep school boys who, when she was younger and her other sisters had played those boys all the time, and her sisters gave her the 411 on how to deal with those guys, that she did that, right? And so she focused all her energies on, becoming an Olympic skier, which she did become. And I did, she was traveling to Europe, and she came through New York once, and I kind of saw her, and we had a nice 2 or 3 days before I took her to Kennedy and put her on the airplane. Her parents said, "Why don't you go stay with Al? He's got a place." I mean, they already called me up and said, Teresa's going to the Olympics in Europe, and on the team. Anyway, and she was, 16 or 17. And we were both still in high school, and so, she stayed at my parents' house. And my parents were also very relatively realized that they could trust me in most ways, more than my brothers and sisters. And so, and my parents were very pleased to see Teresa, and she stayed in a very swanky apartment. So, doorman, elevator operators, the whole Megillah. And that I went and picked her up and walked her through New York and took her out for lunch and took her to the Waldorf and took her to the Central Park and the zoo and the museums, like right from the get-go. And we stored all, and she said, "What am I going to do with all my stuff?" I said, this is a very big railroad station. They have this place that you can just pay 25 cents a day, and it's not a locker. It's like they put it in so she had skis and all kinds of stuff. And, we put it there, and I said, and we'll leave from here to the airport. So that's the way to go. Take whatever few things you might need. You're only going to be here a couple of days. You could wear the same clothes I do. Anyway, so she did take a few things, a nice thing to wear, and some comfy and jammies and her hygiene stuff, and had a little bag, and she put it over her shoulder, and then I showed her the town right from the railroad station, and and I'm a great guide. If I know the town whatever town I go hang in, like if you were to come to Roanoke, I would show you all the places that no one ever sees, right? Same if when you come to the Deep Green, Johnson City, and Boone, and then Asheville. Those are all my towns, right? So anyway, I showed Teresa everything, put her on the plane to go to Kennedy, and in her, she's there, she's warming up, she's working on things, and they didn't dress the downhill. She was a downhill racer, and those folks like go full bore, and she was going down, and there was a part where it got warmer, sun hit it, and the snow melted away and was just dirt. So she came down the thing, she hit the dirt through the air and smashed into a pylon, a concrete pylon, and just smashed her apart, just took her out, right? Ended her career as an athlete, right? So, she stayed in Europe. I mean, I didn't hear about any of this, right? And I got one postcard once she got there and was all excited about this, that, and the other thing. And then I thought, she's at the Olympics, she's, doing something else. And it wasn't until maybe 6 years later that knock, 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 opened the door, and there's Teresa. I got this loft in Soho, and how did she? I mean, this is not like Swansea. This is when Soho was kind of, no one wanted to live there. Just a few of us artists were there, and it wasn't Soho. It was that crappy factory neck of the woods below, above Canal Street, between Canal and 14th Street. Anyway, so she knocks on my door. I open it up, and there she is. And she kind of limps in. She's nothing wrong with her, but she's definitely got this little limp. And she hugs me and kisses me. And I go, Teresa, what happened? And she then tells me the story about how, she hit the pylon. She was like in the hospital for a good year, and she probably wouldn't have walked unless she was in this place in Switzerland that had the best of surgeons, and everything was paid for. And then she was not going to be an athlete, and so they let her go to school in Switzerland, and she learned a number of languages and kind of got into banking, economics, and she said, well, that's going to be my career. And then she came back to her sister got married, so she came back to Maine for that, and she got a full scholarship to get her master's degree in Boston, and she got knocked up by one of her professors, and this was at the time before Roe v. Wade. So only certain states, like New York State, had abortions. And I had friends who I was involved in many social movements. And so I had some feminist friends who ran a clinic. So she came and she wanted to get an abortion. And so I said, okay. And so I took her to my friend who had a clinic, and this person was a really great, not only great doctor, but she was a shrink, she was a shaman, she was everything you could think of that you'd want as a healer. And so she just doesn't do the procedure, she does all kinds of things to balance you, so when you come out on the other side, you're not totally screwed up. So anyway, before the procedure, my friend, the doctor, basically calls me up, and I have Teresa. I've got her with some female friends of mine because I thought it'd be, I'm still with her a lot, but I still have a business and I'm doing all kinds of things, and I didn't want to just hang around, so I put her with women who would support her. Right, they were my good friends, and they would support her, and it would be really good for her to meet women like this, especially since she's going to go through this procedure. So anyway, the doctor, a friend of mine, calls up and says, I need to talk to you about Teresa. And I said, what's up? And she goes, well, she's got a lot more issues than just being pregnant. And, she was an Olympic, and that was who she really was. And that her body is so mangled that when I looked at her, I mean, she looks very attractive, looking at her, her form is nice, her face is pretty, but she's got scars. I mean, they had to rearrange this girl, right? And that's a big issue for her. And, she just went on about these things. And she really needs you. Are you ready for this? And I said, sure, I really care for this person. And I have not really had a major love I had a lot of girlfriends, but no one who I could really, 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 say, I love you, right? I would say, I love being with you, right? And she's a person I could say, I love you, right? So, I don't just jump into that, but I'm there for her. And she goes through the procedure. And I said, so would you like to stick around here? I know people, you can get a job, but I know some, investment people. This is New York City. And it's more than just going to college. And maybe you don't want to go back to that place. And she goes, yeah, I think I would really like that. And at that time, I was hanging at NYU taking courses there. So I brought, we both kind of started doing that. And she lived at my place. And so it's very quickly we became a thing and got very, very deep into each other. And things were going great, And the first time I saw her without her clothes on, yeah, man, she was messed up. And she was I said, baby, there's what I love about you is you, not your form, right? Your form to me is still attractive, And, we had a number of jokes. And anyway, and I said, you should still go see my friend, which she did. And she did better and better. And my friend would give me the 411 and saying, well, it's still pretty much there. And anyway, so, time goes by and she gets a gig and she's making a living. And we're together. And, we're getting closer and closer and we've got this tight bond. And up and she's sobbing. And I go, I don't know if I'm going to be able to tell you this part. But anyway, and I'm holding her, and then I start sobbing. And I wait till we both stop sobbing. And say, so what's the problem? She goes, I love you so much. She goes, I love you so much, and I know you love me, but I don't know if you always love me. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, you got this life here where all these people are around you, and all these women are so much prettier than me, and all these other people are so much more. I said, no, there's something, the thing we have together has nothing to do with that. It's got it's what the meaning to life is. My relationship with you is the meaning of life. And she goes, and that accident just didn't break me up. It took many years off my life, and I'm not going to live that long. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, I'm going to tell her to tell you exactly what's wrong with me. And so I did. And the doctor basically, there were a lot of things wrong with Teresa on the inside, and which caused the emotional problems, right? Because to have to deal with the kind of physical things that she had to deal with. Anyway, so I said, baby, that's okay. She goes, yeah, but I'll probably die. And if we get any closer, we'll probably. So that, it's every minute that we're together that matters. And so she, said, okay, but she could never sweep that under the rug. And anyway, as we lived together, got closer together, did all kinds of amazing and fun things together, and just that's what my life was about, was making her happy, and that's what made me happy. And everything that when she saw things new, I mean, New York City was my town, and when I'd show her stuff, she'd see it in a way that I never saw it. So it was an amazing kind of relationship. And then, after not quite a year of us being together, she basically decided that she was working at this a lawyer firm that was a banking firm, and she knew lots of languages. She was really, for her age, she was like on the ladder up. And they said, well, we want you to go back to Switzerland and be part of our office there, and we'll pay you this, and we're going to send you, to school, and you'll get, your master's degree and then your PhD, and you'll be, right in line to be, you know, that. So she said, I'm going to go do that. And I said, well, that sounds great. Can I come? And she goes, no, I'm doing this mostly so we won't be together. And I said, what? She goes, we've done so much together. I realized that unless I do something else, this looks like a Roman tragedy. I mean, we're having a great time now, and everything's hunky dory. But my medical thing is like maybe 10 years, but there's a strong possibility within the next 5, 8, I'm going to get sick and die. Because I'm always sick. And we learned, that's really when I got into meditation, is with her. And we would go and we found an ashram and we practiced there. And so one day she was just gone. She didn't, she didn't tell me where she was going. She didn't really tell, she just said, I have an, opportunity. I'm going to go to Europe. And so I did. She wasn't there. She left me this beautiful letter I kept for years until my father threw it away. And so I didn't see her. And she didn't really write letters or anything. She said, don't contact me, you know my parents' number. If you want to know how I'm doing, just give my parents a call on Christmas Day. They would love that. And I will call, I talk to them at least once a month, so they'll know what's going on. And if you want to send me a letter, send it to them and they'll send it on. So that's kind of how our relationship went. I never got a note from her. I never really heard from her, but I, would talk to her parents. And one Christmas I was in Europe, and I called them up, and they said, we're heading to Europe. We're going to be in Prague. That's where Teresa is, and she's in the hospital. And I think she would really, really love it if you could come. And I said, I'm there. And I said, so how are you going to get there? And they said, well, we're going to fly into, I forgot. I guess they flew into London and then went into Prague. So I met them at the airport and took the plane. They got me a ticket to go, from London to Prague. And I went with them. And basically, she was already going, And so we went there, and she was just a shell, right? And I spent a good week with her. And the hospital was really nice because we didn't stay at a hotel. We stayed at the hospital. And she was, just like a little girl. She had just shrunk, And I stayed in her room pretty much the whole time and massaged her and read her stories. And her parents and I were there when she died. And yes, John. Well, I'm in the middle of the chat telling a kind of story, but I'll come out in a little while. Okay. I'll be out in about an hour. Okay, then I'll talk to you tomorrow morning. When I'm done here, John, I'll give you a buzz. John has amazing timing. So anyway, that's the meaning to life. You know, I shared everything with Teresa from the time we were about 13, 14 till she died when we were about 26. You know? And yes, Fish. I mean, I'm a scholar. You don't want to. You want to be a scholar, Fish, not a scholastic. Yeah, that was tough, but it was also beautiful. It was um, it was an amazing. I wouldn't have given up any of that, you know, because it puts my life into perspective, and it was really good to have that perspective at 25. And I've had other things up before then giving me perspective, but this was like what it is to be a human with emotions, empathy, right, with grace, because she went out with grace, and her parents were just the motive of grace, right? And so she died, and we they cremated her because the cost of transporting a body was like ridiculous, and all you got to do is put the canister in your suitcase. But she her dust and spread it all over the Alps that she loved to ski in, and even though that where we went and spread the dust was part of the range of that, you know, killed her basically. But she should have died there. I mean, if that accident happened in Maine, she would have been dead. And she, if it happened in America and she survived, she would have never walked, never done anything, never. This guy took her apart and put her back together and gave her like 12 to 15 years of a life that she would have never had. And every day she lived it. And she had the maturity, after us being together in New York for a year, to realize that she wanted to do something else for the last remaining years of her life. The year that we spent together probably was the best we ever had, meaning from that point on, she was going to deteriorate, right? And all the things we did, they would slow the financial thing to do whatever the heck she wanted. She traveled a lot, and her business took her all over the world. She saw things that were amazing. And so when we went into her apartment and her parents went through stuff, she had made a box for her two sisters, her mom and her dad, like a number of people in her life, and she had a box for me. And a number of things that she had kept from the day we met to the day she left me in New York. She had all kinds of little, she used to collect the labels of the bottles of wine that we drank, and things like that. And so she had this box, and she had written me almost every day from the time she left me in New York to the time that I saw her in the hospital. And she had just hundreds of letters that she wrote to me and shared every my father. I had a lot of things that my father. And yes, I still sometimes think of my dad with animosity for that. I built him a house, and in that house, I had a secret. Then and then my dad sold the house, and I made that house as an automated house, and I built it myself, programmed it myself in 1986. And he was selling it in '89 to this rich lady, and she loved the house. And someday I'll unearth the pictures of it. It was an amazing house. Anyway, so he wanted me to come there and show her how to, run the automated house. So I did. I'm a good son, even though I had nothing. Again, I had nothing to do with my family, and and he had already moved out, and they were signing the contract right there, right? And she was a lawyer, and she was, they had come to the deal, and I built that house for my dad for 60 grand, property, labor, and materials, because I had an amazing crew, and we did everything, built all the cabinets, built everything. Anyway, so the secret closet was above the garage, and you entered in it from another closet from one of the bedrooms, right? And I go in, and all the breaker panels from one side of the house are in the garage, and I go in there, and I see one of those pull-down ladders that you go into an attic, and that's where I had about 200 boxes that I had taped up and wrote, Al stuff, don't throw out, very important, very valuable, right? And now no one should be able to find this, but he decided, oh, I wonder what's up there, and had a carpenter put that in. My dad popped his head up and saw all these boxes, and told the guy to throw them out. And then the guy started taking them down. He says, so is your son named Al? And yeah, he built this house. He goes, well, all those boxes say Al's stuff, don't throw out. My father said, it's my house, I do what I want. I had photos from the Fillmore East when I worked there. Of all, I could retire on the photos I had. Right? I had books and books of negatives. He threw them out. Didn't care. That's my dad. I mean, that's his worst side. But the thing I miss most is that he threw out Teresa's letters. And so the woman who's buying it basically was. Yep. Sweet cancer. I love cancers. I'm there. There's this lawyer. Before she became a banker lawyer, she had been a prosecuting attorney. And so when when I said, Dad, what'd you do with my stuff? I threw it. I said, but Dad, and I basically, those were letters from Teresa, and he had met Teresa. So he says, my house, and every time I kept saying things, he says, my house, I do what I want. Well, there was this big knife, butcher knife, that I could have picked up and put in his heart, right? And the woman who is the lawyer, the prosecuting attorney, was going, I can't believe you did that. You're a terrible man. And she's like, I'm just in shock. She's screaming at my father about, what a dickhead he is. And this goes right through my mind. My Aquarian little, measuring things goes, well, I'm so pissed off. I could pick that knife up and kill this motherfucker right now. And here's this lawyer, and she would, be my lawyer. And basically she's a witness, and she could say this guy was totally, and she could convince the jury of my peers that this guy he was destined to die. Anyway, then the little angel on my side said, if you can forgive your dad for this and not kill him, this will be one of the greatest spiritual lessons you will have ever learned. So I'm kind of kill the motherfucker? spiritual lesson. Kill the motherfucker. And she's screaming, I can't believe you did this. Your son is such a great guy. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, kill, kill spiritual. And I finally said, my father is a motherfucker. He's a total asshole. He's not worth me killing him. So I said to the woman, hey, I scribbled my phone number. I said, I got to leave right now. I can't be here with him. And if you need any help, just call that number. I'll be glad to help you out. And I left. And that was also part of Teresa's gift to me, because those letters were probably one of the most important, still are. I remember every single letter, even after her death, was, I didn't kill my dad, and I had the spiritual lesson, and I wouldn't have had it unless he threw her letters. The photos, all those books was like the iceberg of my photos. Anyway, the other thing she gave me was, I went into the Akashic record, and I could see things in my Akashic record, but it wasn't that text of everything. But when I went, I came home that night and I was crying, weeping, and I went into state to calm down, went into my Akashic record, and there she frigging was, in all her beautifulness, the accident, right? And the 3 seats in your library where the Bigfoot can hang out and other people can come out of the chimney. But she was sitting right there, and she was smiling. And she goes, good to see you. And she goes, why don't you go to your Akashic record? And so I did, and all her letters were there. And so to this day, when I go to my Akashic record, she's sitting right there. She's always with me. And I don't really tell people this story. It doesn't make me feel bad, because thinking of Teresa doesn't make me feel bad. It doesn't even make me, well, it does make me feel sad, because I see her at different places, right? But the fact that she was able to overcome all of this is third present she gave me, was the stamina to do what I'm doing for you. So you should always thank Teresa for me doing this for you. Would not do this if it wasn't for her. So, and I've had this kind of loss. I've had loss like this a number of times in my life. I've lost people who I truly love. My second wife, pretty much the same thing, but different. And again, if you go to xratted.blogspot.com, you'll read about the relationship I had with both my wives, Donna and my second wife. And so this is what life's about. And most people do everything they can to not have this life. They distract themselves with, buying things on Amazon and having things they can't afford and being overweight or drunk or alcoholic or drug addicts or sex or dharma and your neuroses. If you want to go experiment and go travel into other things, and going into Shambhala is not that bad, because you get to stay who you are and continue in that path of positive elevation into your consciousness, right? So the so the suffering part of life, and right now, John is saying, "Oh, lose 40 pounds together," right? Well, I've been cooking for him, and I go through this. He wants this, he wants that, he wants this, he wants that. But mostly, I vegetables and chicken and fish, right? And you eat that, you can easily lose weight, right? Now I supplement it. People take me out to lunch and breakfast, and I have meals there. Now, you see me have breakfast at my breakfast spot. So, I have eggs and an omelet and English muffin, and, those things aren't, if I really want to lose 40 pounds, I got to cut all that out, right? And I eat it in a small modium compared to the days when I lived in the chocolate swimming pool of Moose. Only because I enjoyed it. Like, I went to that fancy schmancy hotel for lunch, and I had lunch. And, I enjoyed lunch. And that was the first time I had that lunch in a year, maybe longer. So to have that once in a while, not bad, right? But if I want to lose 40 pounds by, June, well, I'll have to stick strictly to that and eat once a day. And anyway, but John's going on about how, and if you lose 40 pounds, you'll be good as new. Well, not really. I mean, there's things wrong, just like Teresa. She looked pretty good from the outside, but there were things definitely wrong with her that limited her life. And I have the same thing. And now I'm doing pretty good with it. And part of that's because I meditate a great deal, and that energy, instead of me having to take painkillers, I meditate. My endocrinologist can't believe I do that, Well, I do eat the really healthy stuff, John. So, John, did you hear the story of Teresa? You know? Yes, John, I know the process. And what I was saying is, yeah, I'm going to lose that 40 pounds. But, John, I don't know if you looked at the title of tonight's chat. It's the meaning to life, And I just talked about a relationship I had, someone who I deeply loved, and who came before my second wife. And it was a relationship of deep, deep intimacy. And I had known her since I was 13, up until the time she was 26 and I was 25, and she died. And I was telling the cadre here about the meaning to life, and part of that is the suffering, right? Because you don't really can appreciate things. Well, if you're logged on, John, you can thumb back through the chat and see it and hear it. And so, and that's every day. I mean, why I'm here with John is because he's my friend, and I'm here to help him out, to support him, and to go through life with him, right? In this limited amount of time that we're going to be with each other, because that's life. You're only with somebody a limited amount of time, and you really can't appreciate those friendships unless you live them. Meaning, there's that scene from Woody Allen's Annie Hall, where he's kind of a anxious schlemiel, and then he meets this woman who's way out of his pay grade, but she likes him, and they fall in love, and they have all this goofy experiences, right? And then by being with him, she's grown to the point that she moves on, very similar to what Teresa did, but not in the same way. And so she goes off and lives in L.A. With Paul Simons, right? And who's even shorter than Woody Allen. And more of a Nebuchadnezzar Jewish guy, except when he's on stage singing his songs, wearing a black turtleneck. So And that's why most people learn to play an instrument to be cool for a guy or a girl, I mean, all the things I've ever done have mostly been motivated by trying to meet interesting, attractive women. So, because they're a lot more fun than boring guys. Guys are pretty much, I don't even know why women put up with guys. Just, so anyway, but that's part of life, and every time you try to, so in the Woody Allen movie, Annie leaves him and he tries to repeat the same kind of experiences with Annie. Like they got live lobsters and couldn't put them in the boiling water, and he was doing that with other women, and they just looked at him like he was a jerk, and all the other things that he had really a great time with Annie, he couldn't share that with anybody else. Well, what he was missing was the fact that he should have been having other moments with these other women. Meaning, my attitude towards women is, man, if there's one in my life, I'm going to do everything I can do to make them happy. And meaning, if I'm with somebody, I kind of want to know what they're talking about, what they're thinking about, especially if it's something new every day in every way. If that person who I'm with tells me the same thing over and over and over, and there's nothing I can do to help, nothing I can do to make them, no matter what I do, doesn't make, because they just want to go about that thing that happened in third grade, la da da da. And then usually it's see you later, bye, unless I can do something. Part of my training with all my different teachers is, if you can't do good, then don't be there. Don't be there to be the hero. Don't be there to this. If you can't do good, if your presence isn't leading by example, if your presence isn't helping the situation, if your presence isn't making someone feel happy, then, it's time to go. So, but there's this fine line where you have to keep trying, and keep trying until we go, well, that's it, because now I'm just enabling this, and that's, Anyway, so and that's life. It's a fine line, and you have to keep dancing through it. If you're not dancing, it's a waste of time, And if you're only about yourself, how you feel, and what it's all about you, da 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 da. So, but see, John's his only soulmate. No, I've had quite a few soulmates, right? And the thing about soulmates is that they're all individual, right? So if you meet someone new, you got to give them a shot. Meaning, after my second wife died, for a good 12 years, if not more, I had girlfriends and relationships and things, and but at a certain point, when I would let someone get close enough to me, deeper down, they would see there was a part in my heart. There were like little places, chunks where there were other. Teresa was there. My second wife was there. My first wife, and three other women in my life were there, right? And no matter how they tried, there were these, I call them my chorus in my heart. They were my chorus. That's why I call you guys who chat my chorus. You hold the same place in my heart, Not that they do, but in my heart, you all hold the place in my heart. That's why I do this for you, right? And, but that's what life is about. And, no, John, that's not true. I let lots of people get closer to me. She wasn't my John. You need to go back and see the story I told about Teresa, and I never told you, John. There are a lot of stories I haven't told you, John. Because you wouldn't be interested, right? But life is about experience, not holding on, hoping for something that has gone meaning Teresa can't come back. She died in 1975 or 75. She's not coming back, but she's waiting for me every time I go into the Akashic record at that chair, right? And that's why you guys need to put things. You got to decorate your Akashic record. You got to decorate your lodge. So you want to go back. It's more fun to go there than stick around here, right? And by going into your Akashic record and looking at it, you can get the 411 on everything that's going on in your life. See, who is Teresa? Well, John, you're just going to have to go back and watch this again. That's the only way you're going to find out about Teresa. Anyway, but that's what we're talking about, is what life's about. Anyway, so so it's an hour and 17 minutes. So let's take about 20 minutes of the cadre's time before we go into state and talk about your experiences and what, I've just kind of tried to give you a sense of what life's about. It's not about making money. It's not about becoming famous. It's not even about, your responsibilities. It's about the growth of your consciousness. So I want to hear some tales from you guys, or your perspective on what I just told you. Well, John, you gotta go watch this because Teresa came 15 years before my second wife. So, I wasn't time traveling in those days. And that's right, Fish. But there are all kinds of attachments, and that's why do we keep photos? Because they remind parts of us, right? So that's why I became a photographer. Because I did all this stuff and people go, oh, you couldn't have done that. Well, here's the photo. Anyway, and that's before today's digital world. Do you know that photos aren't legal evidence in court unless they are brought to the court by the police / district attorney. The defense attorney can't use photographs as evidence, but the police and the other lawyers representing the state can. And the thing is not to be attached. It's like having an egoless ego. It's all right to have a memory of the event and of the time, but not to be attached to it. To be attached means that attachment runs your life. That you are no longer, you're a slave. You are imprisoned by that attachment. Yes. How much exactly, Fish? Attachment to consume our field, right? So, Teresa, all the people in my life who I've loved and lost, they don't consume my field. What they do is enhance it. I guess that's the best description. Bring them into my life. And that's why I go and interact with people. That's why I go have breakfast, not just to consume calories, but the people I meet there, the waitress, the chef, the manager. I go out of my way to listen to their stories, And I go hang out in places where people kind of hang out so they have the time to tell me their stories. Exactly. Is it serving us, or am I getting to be a slave to it? And that's why, I'm not a big fan of the mind, because it's just a Rolodex, and it's a thing that Lucifer uses. It's one of the main vehicles to manipulate the consciousness, is your mind, because it's kind of attached through the ego to the illusion of the material world. Ego you can see through. Exactamendo. Yep. So that's where we're going. Ooh, 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 22 seconds. Just when you said that, Fish. So anybody else got an idea, a feeling? Oop-a-doop-boop-boop. There's 7 of you there. Where'd you all go? Fish has been very talkative, and you've been coming up with great things, Fish. Da-da-da. Ooh-ba-doop-boop-boop. So, I think we will go into chat, into state. And you're getting really good at being and chatting at the same time. So you can pat your head, chew gum, and walk at the same time. You're getting very good at this. And I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you on the old, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, with insights of this matter, And you guys have been sending me great links, and what I'd love to see, 98, one of our chorus, he's something 98. He put up a interesting video on YouTube on his channel. And he put it, how that little thing, I have bubbles and the disco lights and all that. He has one where he's blue. And he's got his hair in a turban. He's got his little beard. And he's in good shape. He must be in his 20s, so he's really cut. And he's basically naked, right? He doesn't show his junk, but he knows where the camera, he goes in and out, and he knows exactly where that camera starts. So you can tell he's got no shirt on, his whole top, except for his turban. And, and he doesn't show his junk, but he shows below his belly button. So you can, so he's giving this kind of aura of being a genie almost, right? He's blue, right? And he's going on about the connection to life. And I watched this, and he's like prepared, and all these people who are preppers of the end's coming, blah, blah, blah. And he's talking about preparing your consciousness, about preparing your connection to your soul, preparing, within your meditative work. That's the prepper. He was, and this thing is be a prepper. And then he's talking about this thing of preparation. Then he uses one of my one of my stories about the World Trade Center, and, that I was an apprentice electrician on it, that I knew the building intimately, and that what happened with those airplanes could have happened, and that I went to the building about a week and a half, 2 weeks after it was, because a friend of mine who's a really great shrink with PTSD, somebody I worked with at the VA, called me up and said, hey, we're setting this thing up at Trinity Church in the basement for all the guys who are working in the pit. I want you there. You worked on it. You can really, you're a New Yorker. You know cops. You know firemen. I'm a guy from Colorado. I want you there. I said, great. I have nothing to do. I don't have a project. I'll be there. Right. So I did. and I had that whole story, and he played it, and because he said, so things are all happening around us, and here's my friend Sensei Al Bob, and he puts it better than anybody's told me the story, and here it is. So he plays about 10 minutes of it, and then what I love about him, he goes, so this is really amazing, and it's a lot of people would say, oh, he's lying, or that's just a story, or blah 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 blah. He goes, it doesn't matter. What matters is his intent, the quality of his presence in telling this story has more power, more gratis than more gravity than if he was in court. And that's why I like this guy, because everything he says has this intent about it, right? And I was, oh, isn't that nice? That's one of my students. That's one of the cadre. That's one of the chorus. All right. And I realize you all get that. You all understand that. So tonight's little going into state is we're going into state, and we're going into our Akashic record, and there's going to be a few more chairs in the library, and you're going to go to your Akashic record, evacuate all your anger, all that, and then take a look. Now, I know you have been going into your Akashic record and looking at things that you want to know about, and you've probably taken a look at your anger and those kind of issues, and we're going to focus on our intent. Good thoughts, good words, good actions, good deeds, good outcomes, right? So that's what we're going to look at in state. And we're going to sit around on those nice comfy chairs in front of the fireplace, and I want you to bring forth people of the level of your who you loved about, cared about, and may not have lost it as what happened to me, but lost. You can lose. I've lost a number of people in my life. Oh, just because of circumstances, and I appreciated who they were, their really specialness, but they had issues. And I said, well, I'm trained for this. Let me help them out. And I would hang out with them and, and never give up on them and always be there for them until I couldn't help anymore. Just like I said, it was like I was almost enabling them to be worse and worse. And so, I just kind of, then they would, and that's when I was kind of on social media, and they would like scream at me on social media. So I kind of just hung up social media, because I didn't need it. I just used it to communicate with a number of people who were in this situation, and they basically just were eating themselves alive on social media. And I said, oh, this ain't helping them. So I just I had other things to go do. So I went off and did them. So that's kind of what's happening right now. This latter part of the winter, the next month or two, I'm going to, I'm right now here in Roanoke, not just for my medical needs and not just for John, but there were a number of things that I had been involved with socially, with organizations I helped put together, and things of politique and social dynamics, poverty, race, gender, and that's the beauty of Roanoke. It represents all of everything in America right here, so you can see it. Oh. So, there's 8 of you. That's the magic number. You normally put it sideways with a little curve on it. But what we will do is go into state. And again, why we're going into state this evening is to look at the reason. Okay, can you hear me now? Are we all 5 by 5? We all good? It's back. Yep. I'm back. I was giving you time to breathe. Okay, guys. So put yourself in a comfortable position, nothing crossed, no legs, no arms. You can lie down or sit in a chair so you won't fall over. And one, you're in a deep state of relaxation. Your conscious mind is totally focused on your breath. The little squirrel in the cage of your Rolodex is going to sleep. You're not thinking about anything. Your avatar is running on automatic, and you're illuminating yourself by your breath. You're breathing in 20% more than you normally do when your autonomic system is breathing. Now your conscious mind is totally focused on your breath. See it clearly. Going deeper and deeper into a state of relaxation. You're breathing in the prana. It's going in your nose, filling your lungs. You're breathing in that 20% more, and then out. More. And when you breathe like that, your conscious mind shuts up. That little squirrel goes to sleep. You don't think about anything but, within the construct of your avatar, you're breathing 20% in and breathing out that 30%. And when you breathe out that 30%, you're expelling more waste out of your body, more toxins, more poisons than, all the urination and elimination you can do. Because you breathe out hundreds of thousands of cubic centimeters of breath every day. So, that's way more than whatever feces or urine you can eliminate. So see that clearly. And it focuses your conscious mind on breath. And that prana goes in and your blood, goes through your lungs and takes, that iron-rich blood takes that breath right through your body. And it energizes every cell of your body. And the mitochondria is sparking up. And that's what fills your body with photonic light. And that's the light of love's co-creation. Where Lucifer's light is the illumination. That's what Lucifer did. He illuminated the darkness. And when people, I'm a light worker. Well, that means you're a satanic demon. Every time you say that, you are, digging the hole deeper and deeper. Well, that was really interesting. Just when I said that, it was 1 hour, 36 minutes, and 06 seconds, and 6 people. Now there's 7 people, and 6 likes. So Lucifer's here too, and I keep saying this bubble's not popping until Lucifer can forgive himself, itself, herself. Everyone's got to get on the bus. Everyone's got to go home. Everyone's got to be loved. And that's what we're here to do. That's our job. Well, I can do that, fish. I can breathe, put myself in a nice light and just go into state. I can do that. Maybe my next morning one that I do from a place that has good Wi-Fi, I will do it. And I will be in that restaurant amongst people and just be in state, breathing. So that'll be good. Okay? But for now, you guys are going into state. You are, energized yourself with the prana and the chi, and you have illuminated yourself in your imaginary mirror, and you projected that light into your subconscious mind, which is not the scary place, but simply the library of your Akashic record. And you're walking in there, and there's the fireplace, and there's a whole bunch of chairs in front of the fireplace, and then just behind that is your reading table, and right then behind that is your reading chair, and the photonic light is illuminating your reading table, and your librarian brings you your Akashic record. You open it up and you put your right hand on the right hand page and the left hand on the left page, and you lean into your Akashic record and you eliminate all the anger, all the fear, all the anxiety, all the self-pity, all the self-loathing, all of the stupid, ignorant, negative things that make up the material world. You let it all go away. See that clearly. Let it go. And now you're floating up from your chair. You've released all of that anger, all that fear, all that hatred, and it's not in your conscious any longer. And you float over to those chairs and you sit down, and let's have this little conversation about integrity of who we are on a spiritual sense. Why are we here? What are we doing? It's not about the material world. The material world is an illusion. This tool, this gift of the Akashic record, and all of the other doors and all of the other worlds, and your lodge, and the house that all of you live in, that is known as the Oracle of Delphi, where you walk through that front door, it says, know thyself. So let's hear a little bit about knowing yourself. Let's hear about that integrity of our empathy and what it means. Let's hear it. Yoga is another breath exercise. And some of the best integrity we can have is when we make fun of ourselves. Yes, long live the flatulent earth. I mean, one of the best things in life, we're talking about the things I enjoy most, is farting and cutting a loaf and a good piss. Again, one of the reasons I have you guys eliminate all your anger and fear, it's better than a good shit, It really is. A nice glass of wine, yeah. And that's, the concept of everything in moderation is good, because it's like, I love herb, but I don't smoke it that much because I don't have the money, I don't have the access, I don't know anybody anymore. And I'm like homeless. It's, if you try and do that while you're homeless, it's not a good thing. But when I go and visit people and they know I like it and they save me a little something, and we smoke it together, well, that's great. It's like a great glass of wine, and we can be funny and stupid with each other. One of the things I love about marijuana, and one of the things I loved about that TV show, the '70s show, was when all the kids were down in the basement. You never saw them puffing on it, but the place got smokier and smokier. And as the camera went around on the Lazy Susan, and each person would say something stupid, they got stupider and stupider and more funny, right? And that's one of the better things about herb, is that I normally, when I was, on the BOP in New York and had careers and businesses, employees, and people depending on me. Every morning, I would have miso soup, a very nice tea that I would muscle test myself. So I would make a thermos of just the right tea, like number one tea, number two, three, or number three tea. I mean, I would muscle test myself and say, which of these teas do I need? And I would make a thermos and drink it all day, right? No coffee, just that, right? And but before I left the house, I had this little glass pipe. I mean, just a little, not, a tenth of a bud would fill the bowl. And I would just take that in, hold it in my lungs as long as I could, and I'd take the elevator down, holding my lungs, like this, and the super Kirby would look at me and goes, "You're holding your lungs, eh?" That little pipe. And I would walk down Roebling's towards the subway and see how long I could hold my breath. And whether it was oxygen deprivation or the herb, I start hallucinating and seeing pink, xylophones flying through the air and elephants and everything else. And then I take a big breath, and all of that would kind of swirl away, and it would become a beautiful, sharp day. And I'd have a serious buzz, but would be totally right there, 100%. And that serious buzz and being right there 100% would last pretty much until 4 p.m. Like from about 8 a.m., that's when I usually walked out the door to hit the job. And what that little bit of buzz and being totally there did for me was enable me to do my job better than I would have done it any other ways, right? But I wasn't stoned like you see in the 70s show, right? And that's why I like that. Yes. Yep, the anointing oil, that's very good. I mean, all of these things are really good, little bit, just a little bit, and kept as, I try, like all of our chats, the real deal is not so much that I am your great Sensei Al Bob, but I basically meditate and prepare myself an hour before, right? And before I go on air, I put everything about what I'm about to do in that kind of shamanic state of preparation, right? So I can have the highest level of integrity with you, because as your sensei, that's my job, is to have my highest level of myself to share with you. And that's what a sensei does. Yeah, if you're stuck on something, like the people who are have issues with tobacco, and then they chew nicotine gum or patches, well, they're just substituting, right? And that's a good metaphor for anything that you substitute. What you need to do, if it's a substance or a person or anything, you have to first appreciate what it is, appreciate what tobacco is. But a spiritual tool. So I tell, like my Uncle Leo, I've told about Uncle Leo before, and he looked like he came straight off the nickel. And because he was married to my mother's sister, her youngest sister, the youngest one, Mary, and Mary was amazing in that she was always a great athlete, but very innocent in heart. And she never lost, and she got a job working at Beach Note, being an accountant. But she just went in there, did her job, but was pleasant to everyone. And that's why she was there for 40 years. She's going to rule the world, right? Mary just wanted, so she married Leo because Leo really loved her, appreciated her for sweetness, knew that she would make a great mom for his kids, and that he, as an Indian in that neck of the woods, would get nowhere without some kind of connection. And my great aunt owned 3 counties She was like the Mr. Potter of those three. She owned every house, every business, owned all the banks. When she was really pretty, she married every rich man there was and then murdered him. She went through like 11. I mean, she would marry, she was like, when she first did this, she was 23. And, you know, her twin, who the only person she really loved, was very much like straight out of Dickens, died in the Spanish-American War. And then she was like in mourning, always wore black for the loss of her twin brother. And he, didn't come back. So what she did was she was really gorgeous, the prettiest, smartest woman in those three counties. And she married this old banker and just screwed his brains out till he had a heart attack and gave him, she was a really good cook. She was German, so she had this German thing. She could bake all these super duper high fat things and schnitzel. And within 3 months, he was dead, right? Between the food, having sex with him, giving me a blowjob 5 times a day and having sex with him 3 or 4 times, and he just keeled over. She did that to 11 other rich men until she owned 3 counties. I mean, straight up Mr. Potter. And she made everyone's life hell. She threw people out in the winter, had no empathy whatsoever. But when I met her, I was the spitting image of her twin brother. And my middle name was named after my mother's father, who was named after her brother. So when I showed up, she melted like an ice cream cone in July. And so for about 5 years, I would go up there in the summertime when I was young, like between the ages of 5 to 10 or 5 to 11 or something like that. And I would spend the summer there. And my Uncle Leo became police chief and, what do they call them? Magistrates, like the judge for those counties, because he married my mother's sister, and my evil aunt was taking care of her, and Mary was one of the last ones who didn't split, right? Like my mom, everybody else, the other 8 kids went to get away, right? But Mary stayed there, got a job, married Leo. Leo became the sheriff and a magistrate. And he was great because he was like Andy, right? And he loved driving his police car, but he never wore a uniform. He had his own uniform, khaki pants, khaki shirt, but no emblems, no nothing. He did have a badge. He had a leather jacket that some friend of his in the highway patrol gave him. And it was a highway patrolman's, and it had the little, like lots of chief of police wear colonel birds on there, or 2 stars. So this thing had the bird colonel thing and 2 stars on the coat. So he wore that, and it was a highway patrol, not the county policeman. That was as close as he ever got to wearing a police uniform. He had these cowboy boots. He wore it for as long as I know him. You go into his closet. That's all he had. These kind of brownish cowboy boots and khaki pants, khaki shirt, and belts and suspenders. He was a belt and suspender kind of guy. And in his back pocket, he would always have 4 or 5 copies of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And so he was the magistrate. So he had, deputies giving tickets and stuff, and they would come to court. He'd let everyone go. And he would hand them a copy, this big box under his desk. He'd hand them a copy of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And he said, if you come back in front of me, you better know this. Otherwise, you're going to get the book thrown at you. And that's how he kept order. No one got a ticket. No one ever had to, go into hock. No one got points on their license. He just, and unless you did something really nasty that the highway patrol of the FBI kind of got involved with, he'd let you go, period. Right? And nobody did anything really because A, they were all scared of my great aunt, and he never, and she liked the way he did his policing work because it gave everyone to be more scared of her, right? And he was never corrupt. But so he was as Indian as you could get. So my first real total introduction into a shamanic ceremony was with Uncle Leo. And one of the things he did, he smoked a carton of cigarettes a friggin' day, right? And he drank a bottle of Jack Daniels every freaking day. Never was drunk, and he never had a hack because he would drink little bits of alcohol, and he would smoke a cigarette, and every time he would bless both to the great God, right, of co-creation. And jealousy is another one of those self-hates. Yep, survive to be better. That's the way to go, bud. Yep, and that's how my Uncle Leo saw it. That this was all about experience. It wasn't. He was a Mohawk shaman who was the sheriff of 3 counties. So my great aunt, every time I went up, she would so focus on me and mellow out about everyone else that when I would go up there, the 2 cities that were, the seats of the counties, I would go in those cities, and they were all very close together, meaning it should have been 1 county, but there were 3, and because of politics. Anyway, so I would walk around town, and people would give me apples and ice cream cones, and stay here longer. Why don't you live here with your aunt? Because I kind of cooled her out, and that's my first notion of the law came from Uncle Leo, and my first notion of understanding psychology and being a negotiator, being a Jedi. I mean, what were the Jedis really? But they were corporate negotiators. That's what they did, And if, the end of the day, if they had to slice you up like bologna with their lightsaber, well, that's okay. But before then, they never let anything rile them. They never got pissed off. They never got angry or got violent until they had to. Right? And living with my great aunt, and then we called her Auntie, not her first name. She hated using her name. Either, she had all these last names because she murdered all these rich guys, but everyone just called her Auntie or Boss. That was the other, within her business thing. Everyone called her Boss. So, how are we doing with the concept of being in state? I see you're talking about your dietary everything, which is okay. That's a a metaphor of everything else we're doing, right? You are what you eat. At least your avatar is what you eat. That's for sure. Let's see, 1 hour and 57 minutes. Okay. So, how about the whole concept of the integrity of your intent? See, that's really the bottom line of why we're here in this, illusion of the material world, is what is our intent? And what we do with the time, the non-existing linear time that we get in our lives, is our intent, what we use the time for, And the story I told you about Teresa was a great example of intent, natural intent. I mean, I had no plans on any of how that worked out, but from second to second, from the minute I met her at 13 to the time she died and I was 25, my intent was always to be with her. Not physically like, oh, she's my twin. No, no. But the every second by second, my intent was to be there with her. First, because she was so amazing when we were young, and I had no idea, oh, I want to get laid, oh, I'm going to push myself. No, I was with her second to second. And so that's why neither of us were really attached to the concept of us being together, because we were together. There was no, oh, I wish we were together. One day we'll be together. Someday this will work out. Oh, if I try hard enough. And, no. Every second we were together, we were together. So we had, in that scant 13 to 26, what is that? 13 years? In that scant 13 years, we had like 90 years worth of relationship, because and when we weren't together, it was like not a big deal. There was no longing. She was there. When she died, there was no real longing. I mean, the sadness, stayed with me for a number of years, because what we had wasn't sad. So whenever I felt sad, it was like, that's stupid. And basically, why I somewhat teared up and got emotional, I haven't really relived that experience in a long time. And because I always tear up, so I just wanted to do it. But I do, go to my Akashic record, and there she is sitting in that chair. And I can sit down and have tea with her and talk to her about things, And I can go into my Akashic record and see every photo I took of her, even though my father threw them all away. And I can read all the letters she wrote to me, even though my father threw them all away. And yes, I do have a bit of a grudge. Grudge is wrong, animosity? No. Disappointment, that's it. That my father, after I did so many things for him, and then how many years later? I guess 12 years later, I agreed, because he had so burnt his bridges with my siblings, because they all worked for him, and I never did, that when he said, well, I need you to take care of us. And I said to myself, okay, this is it. But I said, Dad, there are going to be rules. What do you mean rules? It's my house. No, Dad, it's never going to work like that ever again. Because if you, Dad, you are a pretty cool guy most of the time. You're loads of fun to be with most of the time. You're generous and I have a good time with you. But when you are the asshole that you can be, I will have nothing to do with it. What if I fall down the stairs? Well, if you're an asshole and you fall down the stairs, well, good luck with that, Dad. And pretty much, I said, okay, I'll take care of it. Now, they were in their mid-70s. I thought they'd frigging, die in a few years. No, they lived another 28 fucking years, and I took care of them for 28 years. And it was frustrating. They did a number, my dad stuck the knife in me a number of times. But again, it was more the lesson. Like earlier on, when you would watch John's channel with me, and a number of you, if you've watched that, would freak out the way John would treat me. And people would say, oh, you're a saint. No, compared to my dad, John was easy peasy, Even when he threw me under the bus like a zillion times, it was not a big deal. I guess I kind of always knew. It was never a surprise. I always knew it was coming. I always had some idea of where I was going to go, rather than being, oh, what am I going to do? I basically said to the universe, okay, it's time for another adventure. Take me there, And every time he freaking threw me out, it was way more fun than being here. And that's where I would go. If I didn't, if it was too cold, it didn't have, if it wasn't right, I would, you know, cajole myself to stay here for a few more days, and I'd get ready and have some place to go. And then when he would lose it again, I would say, fine, see you, bye. And not yell and scream and not get upset and just drive away. And that's how we have to navigate our lives. That's the level of having a life rather than life having you. Can't push away my emotions. Well, that's one of the things about being an Aquarian. Aquarians, we analyze everything. We think with our hearts and feel with our heads. So when emotional shit happens, we kind of go, Meaning that's why I didn't kill my dad when he threw all my cherished belongings away. And again, it was one of those experiences I had that I was freed of all that stuff. And I had a lot of it stashed all over the place, too. So it wasn't like I lost everything. I can't push away my emotions. My dad was extremely authoritarian. My father was a triple Virgo, meaning he was always right. And he was a colonel in the Air Force. And he had hypoglycemia, and he was Italian. So he was treated worse than if you were a Muslim Mexican. Italians in America were treated worse than if you were a Muslim a Mexican. And so he grew up in that. And so he, he spent his life being a millionaire. Where my grandma said, live like a millionaire, don't be one. So he wasted a good chunk of his life becoming a millionaire. And, he died right when 08, 09 happened. My mom died in 08, my dad died in 09. And they basically lost 3/4 of all their cash. And my siblings, who were expecting to be millionaires from their money, got nothing, pretty much. A few bucks, a little of this, a little of that. And I knew it was coming, so I had no, oh my God. And what was really funny, so my dad loved my mother. And they were married 70-something years, 75, 78 years. And, he did everything for her. She was the admiral of the Navy. He was the captain of the ship. And my mom, she could have married lots of millionaires, lots of this, lots of that, but she would never have been able to control them like she controlled him. So and my mom was a triple Capricorn. So growing up in a family, my mom's triple Capricorn, who's ready to murder her children, and who does rule the world, and my father, a triple Virgo, who is always right. He would go to the mat to show that he was right. And he was a colonel in the Air Force, so he was just screaming orders all the time. And what I realized early with my grandma giving me the heads up on this, my mother loved presents. Didn't matter what they were. She just loved getting little presents. And my father would bring her diamonds and pearls, expensive stuff. And it didn't matter that much. It was just, and what she truly loved was flowers that she could cut and arrange. And when I told you the story of where I made a time machine in our front lawn and vaporized a chunk of it and myself. And my mom was just driving in the driveway, and she veered away from the ball of energy and drove the car in the pool. And then when I got her out of the pool, I was basically a red lobster without any hair or clothes on. And she tried to kill me right then and there because I just destroyed her most cherished Cadillac. And she luckily for me, she had been smoking packs of cigarettes a week. So when she ran around the neighborhood screaming, I'll kill you, I'll kill you. And she was, drenched like a rat. Her long hair had come down and went down to her butt. And my mother was a very shapely, beautiful woman. And so her very, queenly kind of gown clung to her body like she was wearing no clothes. And everyone, as she ran after me around the block, and there's, we're living in a neighborhood, and she's screaming, I'll kill you, I'll kill you. And I'm naked, red as red lobster, with no hair on. I look like a bald Hugh Brenner. Anyway, so she nearly had a heart attack, and Mrs. Weirner came and brought her back in the house, and Mrs. Chu came and got me and lathered me up in Noxzema. She was a big fan of Noxzema, and gave me one of her daughter's dresses because she didn't have any sons. And I went home in a dress covered in Noxzema. And my father was there, and I was about to go, and he goes, you can't go in the house, Al. I go, why? She goes, your mother's very angry. She's still, she's, woo. And, the tow truck's there lifting the Cadillac out of the swimming pool. And he goes, I said, so where am I going? He goes, you're going to have to stay in the garage. My mom made me stay in the garage 2 months. And luckily, it was summertime. If it was winter, she'd still make me be out there. Anyway, she came with a plate of cookies and offered me a cookie and said, all right, you can come in, but never do that again, and we'll never talk about it. Don't remind me. I said, yeah, no problem. And I knew she loved flowers, so the next day when I was coming home from school, from kindergarten, or third grade, or whatever grade it was, I clipped some flowers from the neighbor's thing, and brought them to her. And from that moment on, at least once a week, I brought my mother freshly cut flowers that she could arrange. From that point on, we never, but she, screamed and yelled and punished and tormented all my siblings and all their children, belittled them, all you had to do was bring her flowers. And so my father had given her tons of gifts. So my sisters were expecting to get that jewelry. Well, my mom had this very strange thing towards the last few years. She would wrap whatever was, and she'd always have rolls of toilet paper so her eyes would tear and she'd blow her nose. And she would wrap things up in toilet paper. Like things like her, 3-carat diamond ring and her gold earrings. And so over an 8-year period, she was wrapping it up. And my father is fastidious about cleaning mess up. And he would just pick up the, the toilet paper wrapped jewelry and throw it away, not realizing he was doing it. And it wasn't for a number of years until when he bought my mother hearing aids, right? And I went with him, and he bought her the set of hearing aids that was supposed to be the miracle ear. And because what my mom was doing was ignoring my father completely. And so it couldn't be because she was tired of listening to him. No, it was because she was going deaf. So he bought her these hearing aids that cost like $3,000. And the woman said, for an extra $300, you'll get insurance. If they get lost or broken, we'll give you a brand new pair. I said, no. My dad was penny stupid. So he didn't get the insurance, and my mom wrapped them up in toilet paper, and then, he threw them away. And then a day, where are your hearing aids, Wilma? And she, what'd you say? And he searched the whole place. I doused it. I said, Dad, they're not here. And that's when he started to unravel the toilet paper and find out she was just wrapping stuff, and he had been throwing. And then he went into her jewel box and found that half of it was gone, and he realized that she had been throwing it away, and she still did it, and he still threw it away, to the point that, and he went through 3 hearing aids until he bought the insurance for it. And the second time, I don't need that. I'll keep an eye on her. Nope, she threw those away too. So all of these stories I have about my family and people in my life, everyone around me was attached to everything unbelievably stupid, right? Power, what people thought of them, but all the things that were important, like the moments, and my parents were really good. And they're really good moments, and that's why I stayed with them. Not that I was expecting any big money when they died, because I'm taking care of them. Man, I knew they weren't going to have any money, but just the way they spent it, and by the way they kept an eye on it. Their investments were, he bought and sold things not for the kind of investment. It's just because it looked good. It made him look like a millionaire. He would always talk about the day I put $1 million in the stock market. Of course, he lost it all. But anyway, that's the integrity of empathy. It's not thinking about any of that material stuff, but the connection to the people in your life, and not holding on to, my mom. I mean, my mom and dad, they did love each other. I could, I read people. I could tell that, but the only reason why they stayed with each other during the hard times was my mom knew that she wasn't. She was no longer that unbelievably gorgeous woman that every man was, going for. She was in her 50s, so she had all these kids, and what's she going to do? Get a divorce? It would kill my dad would just blow his brains out. So no, she stuck it out, and she got all the material stuff she wanted, that she thought that's what she really wanted. But and she had all the control, and she could do whatever the heck she wanted. Um, but she was smart enough, because when she died, I'm a writer, and she would see me always writing. So when she was she goes, Al, and in the house, and they had another house in North Carolina. There's my closet, and in the bottom there are all these books, and they're all my composition books. And she had been journaling and writing stories and poetry since she was in high school. And that's why I use composition books, like a tip of the hat to my mom. And because they're bound, you don't lose the pages, So anyway, or the thumb drives, or any of the above. I mean, the only photos I really have are the ones I developed myself, because all my digital devices have, broken, or there's no operating system for it anymore. Anyway, so that's what life's about: the integrity of your empathy, right? And what you hold near and dear to your heart, right? And that's why you can forgive your dad when he's really authoritarian, because you realize my father, and everybody who I see who try to hurt me or think they're hurting me can't, because they're hurting themselves way more than they could ever hurt me. It's just like one of my little grandma's rules: never work for someone who doesn't need you. Where's the microphone? Need you more than you need them. I mean, that's the secret in employment wise, anyway. And my problem is that my toolbox, I can't do, I can't go up on ladders. I can't be the electrician anymore. I can't even quite be the manager I used to be, you know. And no one wants me as a scholar. I was at a university today, and I lectured. And out of this big lecture hall, there were about 3 people who were like, wow, and came to me and said, wow, I want to study with you. Can we get you a job here, right? And the president of the school, every time I come over and do one of these things, he'll come by and drop his hat in just to show all, because I mix, I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, right? So I mix all that stuff together. So in the university I was in, all of those departments had kids or teachers who were at that, right? And so there were kids and teachers who were like, whoa, I want to hear this guy. The others, not so much. They were envious. How can he just stroll in and do this? Why does he get to do that? Da, da, da. Why is he, why does our president like this guy so much, right? If he's so important, why doesn't he get a job? Why doesn't he run a department? Why doesn't he? Well, I don't want to. I've been offered those positions because, I tried to, number of institutions, I tried to, go in. So he wants this place to be like Harvard? I'll make it Harvard, right? And I would start it, and the the scholastics would be like crying and moaning, and this isn't fair, and it's not, I published a book about, and in the long run, nobody wanted to do it. So this lecture today, I basically, there were, more than 100 or so there, and there was about 4 who were like enthralled, and I said, okay, fuck this, and I went down the line and did a cold reading of as many people before they ran away, and just told everyone and themselves who and what they were from the inside out. Now, one of the things, when I ran a school and when I really taught, when I worked at universities, one of those things, reason I got good at this, was that it really enabled me to find my cadre, to find my chorus, to find my shock troops, reading and show them who they really were right in front of their face and everybody else. A handful of those people like you guys would be awoken and like, whoa. So is my writing on, do they get rid of my blog spot yet? Can you still read all my cuts? I don't care who runs it. Google owns and runs everything anyway. So here we are, 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 37 seconds. So when we get to 22222, I'm going to say goodnight. Unless you guys got something more interesting to say. I can't push away my father. Telling yourself that's stupid. I agree, I think that, and it's difficult because I can be at total peace and then get behind the wheel of a car. Yes, me too. I lose my mind. I become unconscious, So now my car is my greatest teaching tool of being conscious, so I won't get any more tickets and run into people and things. Get it away. Worst earth sign. Which one? Virgos? Yeah, they're not bad. I had a company, a video production company that when I would send crews out to do, on location things, I'd always make a Virgo in charge because 80% of the time they're right, where the average human is right 2% of the time. So it made way more sense. How did I go from 12 thumbs up to 0? How did that work out? It's a blogger. Pieces. Virgo is opposite of my nest. Yeah, okay. I can, like I said, I know Virgo's pretty good. I've lived with a few, and my dad was a freaking triple one, and he was a colonel in the Air Force. But he could be fun. Just different alignments, exactly. And we all have to be responsible. So if you want somebody to be a certain way, I'm a Quad Cancer Libra coconut flavored apple. And that you are, buddy. My Mars is in Virgo. Well, I'm going to start a war on that one. In the 7th, I just pretend that side of my chart is not there. Be aware of it, because all those things have their own power and their own positive side. Use it, Reverse apple Indian. Oh my God, this is hilarious. It is. And that's one of the reasons I come and do this. You guys make me laugh. What a hobag. Yep. So about 30 mil on a fluke. Yep. I hear potatoes. The hills are alive with the sound of potatoes. Love, empathy, good intentions. Yep. Remember, good thoughts, good words, good actions, good deeds, good outcomes. You're a potato whisperer. Yes, you are. Pachin. Oh, baby, let's have some. When we all get together, we got to have some. We're going to have to brew our own pachin, right? And brew our own tea. Yep. Do. Cusp folk are I like cusp folk because it's like getting two in one. It's like getting a Taurus. No, and no. What's the pet twin? I loved dating a twin. What is it? What is the twin? It's like having two girlfriends in one. Take that astrology. Take it. Virgo cusp. Okay, here are we. We've gone past 2222. We're now at 24. Anyway, so here's another good one. So again, take all of this back home. The beauty of this is that you can watch it on YouTube. And so what is the story? My blog spot, is it still there? Can people still read it? Are they going to charge me money or come after me? I remember being around Google people when Google first started. They were, well, we're doing this for mankind's betterment. Nothing Google does will be bad. And I was like, yeah, right. Good luck with that. God, so let's see. Yes, it's still there. Oh, good. Okay. Anyone who wants to download any of that shit. But that's why I'm going to, say this once more. We have to get a little more. We're like newlings. This is like open code, right? We're building a new aesthetic, right? That's why we do this thing twice a day. At least I do. It's because I know you guys are going to catch on fire, and I am already seeing you doing it. And all those little kind of things I try to push your way, like, hey, we got to start this thing called Humanities Artists Trust International, which will be our ticket to do whatever the heck we want, wherever we want to do it. We won't have to go, I have to say, I have to get a passport. No. By being the cadre of the Humanities Artists Trust, that we are the founders, people will, every country will give us, you're a citizen of our country. We will be known. We will be the titans of this window of opportunity. We will be remembered as the folk who really did something to change the freaking world, and all they did was drop a pebble in a pond. Of course, that pebble was love's co-creation. Flatulence for everybody. That should be that should be on our flag. We all need a garland, that thing we hold as we run down the ramparts screaming, flatulence forever! Yep. And, people fart and they go, oh, who did that? Or, they make some funny joke about it or embarrassed. No, my mother, who was a queen, I mean, every hair was always in place. Everything was amazing. And she had this kind of, she was Irish and German. So she had this beer hall type of humor that she did not share with everyone. And she would pull it out every now and then. She was like perfect timing. So we would be in the fanciest restaurants. And there's like a gaggle of us, 8 kids and my dad and her. And they would pretend we didn't exist. If they could put us in another room, they would, and eat by themselves. And when these people would like give her the stink eye because we were pretty well behaved for wild wolves, but we were always doing stuff like my brother, we'd be and there'd be 3 or 4 tables of us. Like I said, if they could put us in another room, it would be fine. But sometimes we would be in the same dining room. I remember my cousin Johnny, and my dad loved to do this. His 2 brothers, they did okay, but they weren't like millionaires like he was. So he would take them out to fancy places for their families. and he'd have everyone have dinner. Then he'd go off that somebody ordered steak and lobster. So because get whatever you want, and then he would get huffy about looking at the bill, and I said, well, we'll give you some money. And my dad, no, I've got this. Anyway, he would do these stupid shit things all the time. And my cousin Johnny was just from another planet. And he was kind of like, you think Jimmy Strange? Johnny. Woo! So I would I was like the instigator. I would like get him to do stuff and then he would do it and it would be hilarious. So we're in this really super fancy restaurant. And my mother, she's getting annoyed because she's gotten herself lamb chops and she wants mint jelly. And this place used to have the mint jelly just for her. And now they had new management. This French guy goes, "Oh, you do not, this is our famous, lamb chops, and you do not eat these lamb chops with mint jelly." And it was like telling her like she was some kind of neophyte. So she basically says to this guy, "Pull my finger." And all of my father and us who knew this trick like went to the other side of the room, and this guy pulls the finger, and the fart is this. It went on for at least 5 minutes, and the smell enveloped around her and was many different colors. And then it went and stuck to the French guy, and his hair like sprung up and it was like slick to his head, and it sprung up like springs, and his skin turned to purple, and his clothes started to decompose, and people ran from him and thought he farted. She was like the ventriloquist of farts. My mother could throw that fart on somebody, and then they'd smell like it, and, and that was the end of that guy, right? And so when she does this, my cousin Johnny, because the rest of us got up and ran from my mother's fart, my cousin Johnny was like, didn't know the high sign on this one. And he was there and he got a little of, the contact buzz of that fart. And he kind of went woozy and he was leaning back in his chair and he fell backwards and his feet kicked the table, big round table that like six of us were sitting at. He kicked it just right, like some kung fu artist. It flew through the air and smashed sideways on top of this other families who were like looking at us like we shouldn't be there, and it like flipped their table and all of them. They had the family meal, so everything were in big bowls, and it went all over people, and it was like dominoes. One table hit another, and then hit another, and hit another, and we wrecked the frigging restaurant. And then my father said, "All right, everyone out." And we all went out and got in our cars, and he never paid the frigging bill. Of course, we could never go back in that restaurant, but that was my dad and my mom. It was like from the most hilarious to the sublime. And you just had to stay out of their way. You just, had to stay out. And I was pretty good at that. Chemical warfare, yum. Yum, mint jelly. Me too. I've been hooked on mint jelly. So but I wasn't like my brother, since my brother really would say that. My brother is just like my father. But what's interesting, so I had nothing to do with my family, but I am tight with all of my family, all of my brothers and sisters. And they're all really different and have all kinds of issues and stuff. And I never judge any of it, and when they get angry and go through things, it's fine because I love them and I don't. I'm there to support them. I'm there to make them happy. I'm there to, I'm not quite their sensei Al Bob. I'm more their brother Al Bob, but I'm always there to be there for them, and that's what makes me happy. you know? So, so here we are, 2 hours, 33 minutes, and at 33 seconds, I'm going to go. So I love you guys. And again, I'll try and in the morning do something, but definitely tomorrow night, 7 p.m. And, doing two a day is a bit much, but I try. Uh, so you all have a beautiful evening, a beautiful day, a good waking up if you're waking up, a good going to sleep if you're going to sleep. And I'm doing the same. Okay, love you guys. See you again. Take notes. Go to the Akashic Record. You're there now. Give some thought of the integrity of your empathy. Right? Okay. I love you guys. You're the best.